It began with a gun and a room full of silence. Senator John Kennedy had seen many things in his life wars, debates, backroom deals, but nothing prepared him for this. The revolver lay on the table between them, polished gold with no serial number, reflecting the low amber glow of chandelier light like it had seen ghosts. Across from him, Alec Baldwin leaned forward, voice soft as a confession. "Everyone in this room has pulled the trigger. It's your turn now." Around them sat faces the world worshipped Oscar winners, billion-dollar box office names, magazine covers brought to life. But no one spoke. No one blinked. Just the revolver and the weight of a test that made no sense. Kennedy's breath tightened in his chest. The stillness was loud. This wasn't politics. This was something ancient and dangerous, masquerading in tuxedos and whispered rituals. He glanced down at the black envelope beside the gun. On it, only one word was printed in calligraphy: Ascend. 2 hours earlier, he had been chauffeured through winding roads in Beverly Hills, told this was just a private charity dinner hosted by Alec and Friends of the Arts. No security, no press, no plus ones. He should have turned around when they took his phone at the gate and told him, "No devices beyond this point." He should have turned around when he saw a man in a white tuxedo standing at the edge of the hallway, whispering something to a mirror before walking away like it was nothing. But he stayed, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of arrogance. Maybe because, deep down, John Kennedy had always wanted to believe that good men didn't run from shadows. Now here he was, looking at a weapon that wasn't meant to kill but to control. "It's not loaded," Alec smiled, his voice velvet but cold. "It's symbolic. You pointed at the mirror and pulled the trigger once. That's how we let go of who we were. From that moment on, you're part of us. No more questions, no more fear, only loyalty." John's fingers hovered just an inch above the grip, not from temptation but from disbelief. He scanned the room. No cameras, no phones, just smiles that didn't reach the eyes. He asked, "What happens if I don't?" Alec chuckled almost kindly. "Then you go back to your old life, Senator, except it won't feel so familiar anymore." The words hit like a loaded sentence. Kennedy stood still, breathing in the weight of everything unsaid. There was no script, no pitch, no offer, only an action that bound people through silence. He looked at the mirror across the room, then at the revolver again, and finally into Baldwin's eyes. "You want me to pull a trigger and pretend it means nothing, but the moment I do, I become someone I've never wanted to be." Baldwin's smile dropped. A ripple of stillness passed through the room. The temperature changed, as if invisible pressure had shifted. Someone across the table cleared their throat, maybe to break the tension, maybe to signal the next step. John pushed the revolver away. "I didn't come here to play games with bullets and shadows," he said. "You said this was about charity. You never said it came with a test of the soul." Alec's voice lost all warmth. "The people who walk out never walk the same again." Kennedy turned to leave, but paused. In the silence, he felt something shift. Not in the room, but in the world outside it. As if, by saying no, a door had quietly closed behind him. Forever. And just when you think this is where the story ends, when the hero walks away and the music for That's What Happened Next will change everything you think you know about fame, silence, and the price of saying no to the wrong people. If you feel the chill crawling down your spine right now, if you sense something is very, very wrong with how power is protected in the shadows, then stop what you're doing and hit the like button. And if you want to know what happens next to Senator Kennedy, to Baldwin, and to the revolver that wasn't supposed to mean any comment, the number 9 below. Just the number, no explanation. We'll know you're ready to see what lies beyond the mirror. The ride back to his hotel was silent, but John Kennedy couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in the air. It wasn't fear exactly, it was colder than that, more calculated. Like stepping off the edge of a stage you didn't know was there. The driver didn't speak. The car's windows were tinted darker than usual. And as they pulled up to the entrance, the doorman who usually greeted him was gone. Just a quiet bellhop with no name tag and eyes that didn't look up. When Kennedy entered his room, the first thing he noticed was the smell. Not foul, just unfamiliar. A faint mix of metal and lavender. And on his desk, waiting like a forgotten memory, was the black envelope. The same one from the ceremony. Except this time, it was unopened, untouched. As if he'd never even brought it with him. He knew he had left it on the table. But here it was. Back again. Waiting. He opened it slowly. No note, no message, just a small, matte black bullet, clean, hollow, engraved with 2 letters, JK, his own initials. His pulse jumped, not from fear but from recognition. He was being watched, no cameras, no recordings, but they knew. Somehow, they always knew. He picked up the bullet and turned it over in his hand. It was real, heavy with implication, not a threat, a message, a warning, or worse, promise. The next morning, 3 calls were canceled. One from a charity board he'd served on for 7 years. They've restructured. Another from a publisher set to release his memoir. Creative differences. The last from a longtime friend in the media. Just a voicemail. John, I got a call. I don't know from who, but they told me to step away. I'm sorry. That was all. No context, no follow-up, just static silence after the apology. At noon, he walked into his usual cafe near Capitol Hill, only to be met with side glances and quiet stares. The barista smiled too wide. The manager avoided eye contact. When he reached for his wallet to pay, he found a folded napkin tucked between the bills. Written in ink that bled through the fabric were 5 words. We don't forget the mirror. He didn't react, just folded it again, put it in his coat pocket, and walked out. That night, he sat in his hotel suite. Lights dimmed, curtains drawn. For a man who had spoken on the Senate floor 100 times, debated giants, argued over war and justice, this was a new kind of battle. One fought in silence, in shadows, and it was just beginning. A knock at the door made him jolt. Slow, deliberate. 3 knocks. He hesitated, then opened it. No one. Just a box on the floor, no markings, no tape. Inside, a black and white photo of him, taken from behind standing in that strange ritual room the night before. Beside the photo, another bullet, this one engraved with the date, the same night of the ceremony. He was being followed, documented, and more than that, cataloged. That's when it became clear. The ritual wasn't about allegiance. It was about surveillance. The gun, the mirror, the silence it was all a signal. To join wasn't just to accept secrecy, was to become part of a system that collects everything and forgets nothing. Kennedy didn't sleep that night. His thoughts spun in quiet circles. Why a gun? Why a mirror? Why silence? Then the pattern hit him. Every person in that room, he'd seen them rise out of nowhere. Roles they didn't earn. Fame they never struggled for. The one thing they all had in common wasn't talent. It was absence. Absence of scandal. Absence of history. Like someone had gone in and cleaned their slates. The only exception was him. And that's when the phone rang. No caller ID, no ringtone, just vibration. He picked it up. Static. Then breathing. Then a voice, barely above a whisper. You should have pulled the trigger. John's heart thumped. He tried to speak, but the line went dead. He looked at the bullet on the desk again. And suddenly, he knew this wasn't about intimidation. It was about documentation. Every refusal, every hesitation, every outlier. Logged, tracked, prepped. Because in this world, loyalty wasn't rewarded. It was required. And silence wasn't asked for. It was enforced. But Kennedy wasn't built to be silent. He knew there was more to this. He knew this system wasn't just about him. It was about everyone who'd ever said no and paid for it without ever knowing why. And if you've ever had a moment where you felt like the world quietly turned against you for something you didn't, a door slammed shut without explanation, maybe you felt the edge of this system too. If you're still watching and the tension hasn't left your chest, like something's wrong but you can't explain why, then drop a comment below with the number 9. No words, just 9. We'll know you see it, and we'll take you deeper. The next morning, Senator John Kennedy woke to find his hotel room phone blinking, read 5 missed calls, all from blocked numbers. He sat up, slowly, almost unwilling to break the silence that had settled over the space like a fog. The weight in his chest hadn't lifted. If anything, it had deepened, like his body had caught up to something his mind was still trying to outrun. He played the messages. The first 4 were dead air, but the 5th had a voice. Clear, smooth, and oddly calm. If you want answers, it said, follow the man with the blue coat. He'll be waiting near the reflecting pool. Bring nothing. Say nothing. Just listen. John wasn't sure why he went. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the look in Alec Baldwin's eyes the night before. The way he smirked, not like someone who was powerful, but like someone who had given up being human a long time ago. Something was broken inside him, and whatever had done the breaking, John knew it was older than one man. It was a system, a machine, and that gun, symbolic or not, was part of its gears. At noon, he walked past the Lincoln Memorial, the wind cutting sharper than usual, as if the city itself had become hostile. Near the edge of the reflecting pool stood a man in a long blue coat, back turned, head tilted up like he was admiring the skyline. No movement, no signal. John approached cautiously. The man spoke without turning. "You didn't shoot. That makes you dangerous." His voice was younger than expected. Calm, measured. "You don't know me, but I know you. I used to be you." John raised an eyebrow. "You were a senator?" "No," the man chuckled. "But I was invited. Just like you. Same room, same mirror, same empty gun." John's jaw tensed. "So what happened?" The man turned, finally revealing a face both unremarkable and unforgettable. The kind you'd pass on the street and recognize later, but not know from where. "I pulled the trigger. Nothing happened that night." No explosion, no applause. But the next morning, every barrier I'd been hitting just disappeared. I got a promotion. A 6-figure contract. Everything lined up like someone had cleared the board for me. But the silence they bought from me, it cost more than I thought. John studied him. "What kind of silence?" The man reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope, white this time, sealed with wax. "They give you one of these every year. A reminder. Inside is always the same thing. A name, a date, and a phrase." He handed it to John. This year it said, "K. Reeves, the 7th of June. Don't intervene." John felt the blood drain from his face. "You're telling me they send instructions?" The man nodded. "Not all the time. Just when something needs to disappear quietly." John clutched the envelope like it might bite. "What if you disobey?" "You don't," the man said simply. "Not if you like breathing." John took a step back. "So why tell me now?" The man exhaled slowly, like someone who had carried too many secrets for too long. "Because you said no, and because once you say no, they don't stop watching. They just change the lens." That night, back in his room, John opened the white envelope. It was real. Inside, a slip of ivory paper with 3 lines. "E. Chambers, the 14th of July. Never existed." John sat frozen. Chambers was a journalist, one of the few left who still investigated the elite. She'd been working on something big, whispers, about a ritual within entertainment. She'd emailed him months ago. He never responded. The last time he checked, her website had gone offline. Socials wiped. Every article she'd ever written disappeared from search engines, gone like vapor. That's when he realized what Baldwin had meant when he said, "People who walk out never walk the same again." The ritual wasn't just about power. It was a filter line in the sand between those who would obey and those who would be rewritten. He stood, heart pounding, and stepped toward the mirror in his suite. For a long time, he just stared, not at himself, but at the memory of that room, that moment, that gold revolver. He hadn't pulled the trigger, but they still considered him marked. Then his phone buzzed. An unknown number again. Against his better judgment, he answered. "Senator Kennedy," the voice said. Feminine, measured, almost robotic. "You have one opportunity remaining to correct your error. You'll receive the package within 48 hours. If unopened, your removal will begin at sunrise on day 3. This is not a threat. This is protocol." The line clicked off. John lowered the phone and whispered to himself, "Removal? From what?" Because up until that moment, he thought this was about fame, about silence. But now it felt bigger. Like history itself was being edited in real time. Not with bullets, but with memory. And those who said no weren't just punished. They were erased. If this part of the story made your skin crawl, if you're starting to feel like you've read about people vanishing without a trace and wondered why no one ever asked more questions, then don't scroll away. Hit like. And if you're ready to go even deeper into the machine behind the mirror, drop a 9 in the comments. Just one number, no context. We'll know you're still watching. We'll know you're not afraid of what comes next. The package arrived exactly 48 hours later. No return address, no courier. Just a plain black box sitting neatly on the center of the bed in Senator John Kennedy's hotel suite. It hadn't been there when he left that morning, and the door had still been locked when he returned. No signs of forced entry, no camera footage. The concierge claimed no one had gone up, but the box was there, waiting, like a decision that couldn't be delayed any longer. John approached it with the caution of a man who had read too many headlines and seen too many friends fall without explanation. The cardboard was unnaturally smooth, matte black, sealed only with a single red sticker, no words, just a symbol. A mirror fractured down the middle. He hesitated before opening it, half expecting the thing inside to scream or explode or whisper something he wasn't ready to hear. Inside was no letter, no bullet this time. Just a small digital recorder and a thin black card with gold lettering. The card read, "Listen, then decide. Speak and be forgotten. Obey and become eternal." He pressed play. A voice came through, soft, familiar. It was Baldwin, but not the polished version from late-night interviews or film sets. This voice was worn, tired and the edge of collapse. "You think saying no makes you brave," Baldwin began. "You think walking away makes you safe. But you don't understand, John. None of us did. Not at first." The voice paused, as if choking back something unsaid. "I thought the mirror and the gun were just symbols. Theater. A way to scare us into silence. But I was wrong. It wasn't a show. It was a door. And once you pull that trigger, you're not just making a deal. You're crossing into something that watches you back." John sat down slowly. Baldwin continued, his tone now lower. "There's a reason the rise is fast. The fame, the fortune, the protection, it comes not because you're talented, but because you're owned. Once they have you, you're a vessel. You're expected to carry messages, ideas, silence. And when you resist, they don't destroy you. They erase you, bit by bit, reputation first, then memory, then history." John stared at the wall across the room, suddenly aware of how quiet everything was. Not peaceful constructed. The HVAC had stopped. The city outside had no horns. Even his own breathing felt staged, like someone had dimmed the world just enough for him to notice. The recording crackled back to life. "I don't know who's still alive, John, but I know who disappeared. Chambers, Daniels, Maria Leach. Do you remember her? No? That's the point. They pulled the trigger and then spoke out. And now, even Google doesn't remember them. That's what happens when you break protocol." Baldwin's voice quivered. "I tried to get out. I tried to speak, but they sent me the drawer." That word hit like a punch. John remembered the vault, that cold, sterile room Baldwin had referenced the night of the ritual. Rows of drawers with names, contracts, data, lives. "They showed me mine," Baldwin continued. "Inside was everything. Phone calls, deleted texts, surveillance photos from decades ago. Things I didn't even remember doing, but they remembered. That's their power. They don't just record your sins, they create them." The recording clicked off. John looked at the black card again. "Obey and become eternal." A messenger, a thread disguised as legacy. That night, something strange happened. While he tried to sleep, his hotel television turned on by itself. Static. Then a frame appeared. Security footage of him. From earlier that day. Walking, thinking, talking to no one. But something was wrong. In the reflection of a window he passed, another figure was following, always just behind. But in reality, there had been no one. He played it 10 times. The figure was always there in the reflection, never in real space. That's when he realized he was being followed by something that didn't live in the physical world. It lived in memory, in cameras, in systems. It was part of the mirror. The next morning, his name trended on social media, but not for anything real. A fake quote was circulating, attributed to him. "The rich deserve silence. Power is peace." It went viral within hours. Journalists reached out, demanding answers. His office denied it, but the video proof appeared online too. AI, generated, perfectly lip-synced, indistinguishable from real life. And the most terrifying part? His closest friends started to believe it, not because they wanted to, but because it looked real. Because truth had been replaced by replication. And in that moment, John Kennedy understood. The gun ceremony wasn't just a loyalty test. It was the activation of a new identity, a digital shield. For those who pulled the trigger, the system protected them, buried their sins, polished their image, amplified their voice. But for those who said no, the system did the opposite. It rewrote them. And if you're hearing this now, if you're starting to question what's real and what's been curated, if you've ever felt a version of yourself slowly slipping out of others' memories, then maybe you're closer to this than you think. If you're still watching, drop a 9 in the comments. We'll know you haven't forgotten what truth feels like. Even when the world insists it never existed, it was never about the gun. That was the illusion, the showpiece, the ritual, the distraction. What Senator John Kennedy now understood, far too late, was that the real weapon had always been narrative. The power to shape it, to control it, to erase and replace it at will. His face was still everywhere. Interviews he'd never given, speeches he'd never made, headlines quoting words he'd never said. He hadn't been silenced. He was being rewritten. By the end of the week, 3 major networks had aired exclusive leaked footage of Kennedy at what they claimed was a closed-door political fundraiser where he made elitist, deeply troubling remarks about the public. The footage was immaculate, his voice, his face, even the way he leaned on the podium, but he had never been there. He'd spent that day alone, walking along the Potomac, trying to calm his mind. And yet, even his own colleagues began to distance themselves. "I don't know what's going on, John," one of them texted, "but you need to get ahead of it." How do you get ahead of something you didn't do when the world believes you did? He tried to speak out. He arranged an emergency press conference, only to find the venue suddenly unavailable. His live stream was hacked mid-broadcast. His mic cut out. His screen glitched. What the public saw instead was a distorted version of his face, flickering between smiling 1 second, frowning the next paired with a caption that read, "Senator Kennedy, I say what I'm paid to say." That night, he received a single text message from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "The system doesn't delete you. It replaces you." He didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every screen felt like an enemy. Every reflection, a warning. It wasn't paranoia. It was programming. And the mirror? It was more than symbolic. It was their window. Sometime around 3 a.m., the lights in his hotel room began to flicker, then dimmed, then went out. He rose slowly, heart thumping, unsure whether to reach for the phone or the door. But before he could choose, the television turned itself on again. This time, no static, just a single live feed. Alec Baldwin, but not the Alec Kennedy remembered. This version was haggard, thinner, eyes sunken. He sat in a dim room, speaking directly to the camera. "I was told not to contact you," Baldwin said, "but they didn't say I couldn't be seen." His voice was cracked, desperate, no longer performing. "They call it the reflection protocol," he continued. "Once you enter the ritual, pull the trigger. See the mirror, you become part of their cycle. They can edit you, John, not just publicly. Psychologically, digitally, socially, they've done it to others. They've done it to me. And once the public sees a version of you enough times, they become complicit in the lie. That's how they win. They don't just erase the truth. They make it uncomfortable to remember." John leaned closer. "There is only one way out," Baldwin whispered. "Not safety, not escape, but a moment, one moment where the truth breaks through their code." His hand reached off camera, pulling something into frame. A photo, old, grainy, unmistakable. It was John Kennedy, from 20 years ago, holding hands with someone who no longer existed, a person Kennedy barely remembered, a mentor, a woman named Ruth Chambers. "She tried too," Baldwin said, "before they wiped her." Then Baldwin looked directly into the lens. "You can't save yourself, John, but maybe you can leave a crack in the mirror for someone else." The screen went black. John stood frozen, gripping the edge of the dresser as if the room itself might collapse. At dawn, he made his decision. He contacted the only journalist who might still believe him, a young independent named Aria Blakesmall, following no corporate ties, a history of chasing stories that made people uncomfortable. They met in a parking garage beneath an old museum. "I'm recording this," Aria said. "I want you to," John replied. "But not just to prove what happened. I need to say it before I forget." For 3 hours, he told her everything about the ritual, the gun, the mirror, the recordings, the fake videos, the vanishing journalist, the protocol. She didn't flinch, not once. When they finished, she looked at him and said, "They'll come after me next, won't they?" "They already are," John said softly. She nodded. "Then let's make it impossible to silence both of us." That night, Aria uploaded the video on 12 platforms at once. mirror servers, proxy routes, auto-duplicates built to survive takedowns. The title, "The Ritual They Don't Want You to See," Senator John Kennedy speaks out. Within hours, it hit 1 million views. Then the takedowns began. The video disappeared from YouTube, then Instagram, then TikTok. Then news broke that Arya's apartment had been ransacked, her laptop gone, her phone's fried. But the video live reshared, re-uploaded, mirrored. And that's when it happened. A glitch. On a national news broadcast, during a primetime interview, a guest anchor froze mid-sentence. Her screen blurred, then flickered. And for 2 seconds, just Arya's video played, unedited. Kennedy's voice rang out. "They want your silence more than your loyalty. Because silence doesn't need maintenance." 2 seconds. That's all it took. But it was enough to prove the system wasn't perfect. There was a crack. And if you've made it this far, if your heart is racing and your thoughts won't settle, ask yourself, what would you do if the world tried to rewrite you? Would you pull the trigger or walk away? Drop a 9 if you'd rather shatter the mirror than live in a lie. They didn't expect the crack to spread. What was supposed to be a fleeting glitch, a technical hiccup, a momentary lapse turned into a firestorm. Within hours of Arya's video flickering across that primetime screen, thousands of users began asking the same question. Who is Senator John Kennedy really? But not in the political sense. They weren't questioning his policies or past speeches. They were questioning why his image had started showing up in places he'd never been. Why so many clips of him suddenly looked perfect. Too perfect. As if they were generated, not recorded. Hashtags began to trend. Number the mirror glitch. Number, Kennedy didn't say that. Number, refuse the trigger. The system responded like a wounded animal, fast, chaotic, and ruthless. News anchors who tried to mention the leak suddenly went off-script, live on air, then lost their jobs within 24 hours. Several independent platforms were mysteriously shut down for policy violations. A university professor who uploaded a frame-by-frame analysis of the mirror ritual saw his credentials revoked, his website blacklisted. And yet, despite it all, the video kept resurfacing. John Kennedy, once a respected statesman, now became something else entirely, a symbol, not of defiance, but of memory, of the terrifying realization that in a world of infinite replication, the only thing more powerful than image was truth, unfiltered, unrehearsed, human. But the cost was high. Arya Blake vanished 3 days after the video hit 5 million re-uploads. Her apartment was found empty. No signs of struggle. No signs of her at all. Not even on social media. Her name slowly stopped appearing in search engines. Even her mother, when reached by reporters, said, "I don't know who you're talking about." It was happening again. John Kennedy knew his time was limited. Each day he woke, his reflection felt less familiar. In interviews, people quoted things he never said. Old colleagues avoided eye contact. One morning, he opened his laptop to find his own Wikipedia page rewritten. It described him in past tense. He was still alive, but not for long. Not the version of him that remembered. And that's when he made his final move. He returned to the place that began, the private estate in Beverly Hills where the mirror and the revolver first appeared. No invitation, no escort. He just walked in, past the gate, past the empty drive, past the lobby where no one stopped him. Everything was open. The ceremony room was still intact. The chandelier flickered. The candles had burned low. But the mirror stood untouched, waiting like a predator, holding its breath. And in front of it, again, sat the same revolver. Gold, heavy, empty. John approached slowly. He didn't pick it up. He stared into the mirror and whispered, "You can't erase a man who already let go of everything." Then, for the first time, he did something no one expected. He spoke his real name. Not the one in headlines. Not the one in campaign posters. The name only his mother called him. And the mirror cracked. A long, silent fracture ran down the middle, just like the symbol on the envelope. Except now, it wasn't symbolic. It was real. And in that split second, across every surveillance feed, every public screen, every digital file, something misaligned. For the first time, the system stuttered. Elsewhere in the world, a reporter found a folder she wasn't supposed to have access to. A glitch. Thousands of erased names suddenly appeared. Ruth Chambers, Maria Leach, Arya Blake, and John Kennedy. Alive, untouched, human. The system had lost control, just for a moment. And sometimes, that's all it takes. So if you've been watching, if your stomach has turned and your mind has begun questioning what you see, what you hear, what you remember, don't let it slip away. Don't scroll past this. Like this story, if you believe truth doesn't require perfection. Comment 9 if you'd rather be forgotten for standing up than remembered for staying silent. Because someone is watching. And your refusal to forget might be the next crack in the mirror. Ask ChatGPT.